Well, now this here is true. With Ray and my dad and my real buddy passed away a few days ago, and I didn't know it till just about a week or two ago. He'd been crippled a long time, and he was the one that I'd went around with so much, and we treated one another so good. Uh, that was about in 1933 or 4. And so, with the living here, and all them kids, Mama come out, stepped out of the kitchen, and she said, Nathan, and Dad had bought an old 28 model Chevrolet truck. It was a ton, had them four-cylinder motors in. God, them would run with an underdraft carburetor. Gosh, what a running mode. And so, she says, you better take Ray to drive that old truck and go to the Stone Mountain and pull some gay lads. Said I've owned just pretty close to the last of the flight, and the meal's nearly gone. Gaylac now at that time was a bringing ones up here was 20 cents a thousand, and the Stone Mountain Gaylac they'd give 10 cents more was 30. Count is thicker growed in that lime country. She baked up part of that flour of some biscuits, or we called them a lot of time cat heads, a good brown cat head. And then we took about a peck of Osh potatoes with us. We just called them taters at that time, and I do on to speak both of you, Osh potatoes. And we couldn't hardly raise a sweet potato up here. And so he'd better shipping a few coon dogs and make a little, maybe ship a coon dog the way he bought it and make $3 or $4 or $5 on it sometime. Off down in them there swamp coons down in the country. They had a coon off there they called the swamp coon. And said plenty of them and wanted dogs to help catch them up. Said couldn't raise a chicken, nothing. Them my swamp coons would come in and eat all the chickens out, diddles. And so he bought that dog of a fella down here on the hill. And he had bought it of somebody in his half bulldog. And its mouth was about that broad, and God, if you didn't keep that dog tied, he'd eat people up. And there is no way to make hardly friends with it. Even you yourself, or you got acquainted with it, if you done it a little bit bad, he'd remember it next time and come in on you. Feeding it wouldn't me if I didn't watch. You had to treat him right. You was a dog. Wasn't a female, you was a dog. And so it happened out that he happened to come up to freeing him, my buddy that passed away a week or two ago. And so I stepped out and I'd, hello. And he said, Ray, you got anything that you'd know worked up that we could make us a few dang nickels? He said, God, I ain't had a pack of smoking now in 3 weeks. I'd yell, I've got something worked up. I'd Mama's worked it up. I'd starvations are working it up first. I'd pizza coming on the table. I'd pizza in the yard. And so he said, what is it? I did. Mama's told Dad we're going to have to take the old truck and go to the Stone Mountain and camp out and pull Gaylac. Well, he said, you reckon you'd let me go along? He said, I'd like to pull a few. And if I can pull in and get me a little money, I'd yell, Dad'll let you go along. So we got rigged up, tied that dog up in that old truck bed, put the peck of potatoes all in the gunny sack, and the coffee that he'd took to boil, and the biscuits in the flour sack. And we got over to my sister, oldest sister's up Beaver Dam, Pick Britches, lower end of Pick Britches. They call it Mountain Dale anymore, where they built a church up in there few years ago, about 30 some years ago, I guess, and named it Mountain Dale, but it was called Pick Britches at that time, yeah. And so we left the truck. The road got so rough till you couldn't make it. Wouldn't have more than made it with a wagon, and a team washed out. So we walked, and here's around, I guess, we walked 3 or 4 miles up that mountain to get into the Tennessee, crossing the Tennessee side. And so we got across on the Tennessee side, and Dad had been in there in the time when they rode the covered wagons and pulled Gaylac. And he knowed where there was a little limestone spring down in that woods so far down from a field it was growing up. And he said, now it's been a long few years, but he said, I'll walk and look around. He said, you'ns wait here, and I'll look and hunt the spring. He said, it's our old stomping ground, camping place. And so he come back and he said, I found it. And we walked out to the left, went in, boys, what a spring. And a limestone spring, now ain't got much lime in it, and you talk about healthy water. Gosh, it'll make you feel stale. And so we got looking around there, and he said, now we've got to find something to make us a table out of, and some seeds. And we got to looking around out there, and lightning had hit an old big twin chest, big as some of them growed, and it growed off, and that lightning had blowed off one slab, was about that broad, about smooth as a board. Gosh, what a pretty thing. And we all carried that and laid some rock, and laid it across and made us a table, and went back and carried 2 more and laid some rock and made us a seat on each side. And there, and then to the end, we built our campfire to fix or roast our taters, and mashed potatoes or taters, and him bought his coffee. The biscuits was done baked, and so we got that fire going. And he said, now, Ray, he said, you take a dog up and tie it near that old field and see to it. And Dad, now, parents back in now, the way they raised their kids, when they told them to do something, you had to do it. You couldn't say, no, I ain't going to do it. God, they'd grab off a withe or bush and jack your feet out from under you. They'd make you wish you had done. And so them taters was starting to roast, and the dog tied up there, and Hicks was saying nothing. And them there mountain birds was going, boy, it's lonesome at that time of the evening of getting dusty dark. And that other bird had done hollered. You never could get to see 'em much. They was back here in the beach where it's all through that country. Growed up in it as a little boy. And that bird now, when it hollered, you didn't need no watch. His idle dog. And you know you better be a hightailing from where you's at back in there. Well, there's one holler there on the Stone Mountain. Go, and holler about 3 or 4 times. Something is all over. I said to my buddy, Dad, he maybe didn't hear me, and I said, It's just a idle dog. He said, God, how do you know? That bird hollered there a while ago. And it went, idle dog, idle dog. He said, God. Yeah, it's just idle dark. And so directly it was getting down dusty dark. And them taters was getting nearly roasted. And we'd put us the biscuits aside of the fire to warm them up a little. And so about that time, the dog went to rain. And I know the dogs bark, you know. Now, when you learn your dog, you can tell what's a barking at an animal or somebody good. Gosh, my dog's all this I can tell. And Slick here now, I can tell when his voice is a barking at somebody from the other stuff or another dog. His voice is, when you learn them, the same as you'd learn difference in people's motors of pace. I run. I had that dog as a barking at somebody, and who would be in this mountain but us right now? Us three. And I run up, and there come a woman she looked like she's about in her 50 or maybe up in her 50. And her black hair was hanging down to here. And had the shoes on, and she had the soles tied on, tore loose with these here old-timey can rubbers that you can your food in, you know, that they call preserving anymore. And she had 2 or 3 of them looped over into her slipper to hold the sole on, would come loose. And her dress, she had on a black dress, and it was stripped along her thighs, yet her thighs showed through between the strips, where it was torn. She says, I was pulling Callie, and said I lost them, and a hunting it got dark on me, and said I heard somebody out here. And I said, Dad said, yeah, and said, I've been up here 3 days. And she said, I've had 3 raw onions to eat in 3 days, one a day. Is all I've had to eat. Now this is true, Dave. And so she went on out toward the dog. Don't go to that dog. She's going to show me what she could do, you know. I don't go to that dog, or he'll eat you up. And I'd try to reach out to catch her, kind of, you know, and she just went on, motioned her hand over the dog's head and said, poor dog, like yay. And the first time she waved is getting up like it might bite her a little. When that one time went around, it just act like it couldn't do nothing with its mouth. Its eyes popped out a little. And then the next time, the mouth seemed like went in a little more, couldn't do nothing. Its body kind of was going. And then the next time, I believe it's about 4 times that she done it. And the 4th time, it fell to the ground like it's dead. And then wiggled its mouth a little more. And its eyes were winking. I'd God, you killed her dog. He said, no. I said, no, son. Said, I wouldn't hurt your dog. Said, I just put it all sleep to maybe learn it little manners from now on. When it wakes up about 15 or 20 minutes, he said, it'll be a different dog from now on. Said, he'll remember me doing me. Well, she said, I'd said, you and was camping. Yeah, Dad knowed over here, and we were camping to get us some food, the victuals or food. Poor Callie. Well, she said, you reckon mind me to come down and stay with you? And said, I hunted from a Callie dark. And said, you got anything to eat? Said, boys, I'm down and hungry. Yeah. We got some eat, and I'd come on down with us. And she walked on down with me. I told Dad, here's a a lady or a woman, I run on up there on the dog, and he shook hands with her and told her to sit down and make herself at home. And so directly he ruck the taters, checked them, ruck them out, and give her one. She peeled it and we went to eating. I got me one and was peeling, went to eating about that time. Was sitting there eating. We tucked a little salt to salt her taters with. And she looked around and said, son, said, look up yonder, your dogs are coming to now. And it was the wobbling around there in a staggering directly about a minute or something is all right. Said, I told you, I just put it off sleep for 15 or 20 minutes, and that's about what it'd be. And so then, see, they stepped out away from the camp and we went to get some wood, and I was sitting there with her, and she said, now, son, said, you a fine young boy, and you nice, I can tell you. And said, I want to help you. She said, said, I'm a witch. And said, I'm going to put a little spell on you that'll help you in your life, and it's whole, and a helping you. Gosh, I can feel that now in me when I go to talk through here in my field. Said, I'm going to make you humble with everybody. Said, now and then they might push you enough till they'll throw you off. But said, now you'll never hold a grudge no more. Or well, if you ever hit any, you won't hold none long no more in your life. And said, I'm putting a little enchantment on you for your life that you lead. And so we stayed there, and she eat another tater or two and some biscuits, drunk some of his coffee, bought coffee. He said, woman, he said, now we've got to go we had our beds out there to the side, tucked some quilts. And his bed is just outside of mine, hit the other boyfriend. And so we went to bed and got out there, and we took the matches, was feared it might rain up in that mountain, and put them under I put them under an old chestnut tree bark where it died with that on there. Yet the bark just pull them out so if it rained they wouldn't get wet. Yeah, and she said to him, it went when the boy said he had a pocket knife, and I didn't have. I believe it was a Barlow, one of them old Barlow. To call old anymore, Barlow pocket knife they called it. Had one blade in it and good metal. And she said, could I keep your knife to eat the rest of the taters with? We'd left some. And he said, yeah. And so I was dozing off to go to sleep a little, and he punched me, and he said, God, Ray. He said, how in the hell can you sleep? He said, there's a damn witch out there. Said she was. And he said in my school book where it's pictured it, witch with a black dress on, her nose was about that long and pictured out and a hook on the end there. And a riding a broom where it's pictured in the picturator knife. And he said now they told me, reading that in school, it wasn't no witches, they just put that in there to make you learn. He said, God the hell, they just thought it. He said maybe it caused it to come witches by them a picturing they. He said they want to sit in that air right now. It was my knife. And he said if you go to sleep, she might slip out here and cut her throats with. God go to sleep. She don't have to use a knife. If she wants to, she can witch us into a mouse. No into a cat first. Make a cat out of us. Be laying here, 2 cats. Her dad'd make three cats, Alenia, three black cats. And then I had time more, and she'd wish us into a mouse, and we'll stay a mouse. And when she gets us into a mouse, it ain't no way to break a chant, man. As long as if in a cat, if somebody come along, it could out her and every trick could get us back what we is. But if she gets us in a mouse, it's done. We'll stay a mouse on and on. He said, God, I didn't know that. he said, God, that's a new idea, that's right. And I'd got to be quiet, she might hear. I don't get her stirred up. I'd try to treat her nice till we get shit of her. And so we went off sleep. Or I did, and I didn't know, and he'd went to sleep. It'd come a rain on up in the night, and I woke up, and between us and the quilt, we had one spread on the ground with leaves ruck up under it, and then to keep the dampness off what we could, and then spreaded the other one over top and put leaves in it to make it warm with the chilly of the nights in the fall of the year. And so it'd rain, and between us, in them leaves on top of that quilt, and fell down there, and here's about 10 or 20 gallons of water between us, soaking through the quilt on us. God, that's a bad feel. Soaking in on her back. Dad hollered. He'd woke up in it and hollered and said, Ray. He said, get up and see if you can find that campfire and get a fire started. He said, I'm cold and drowned. He wasn't going to face that woman out there. God knows. And I know my boyfriend had not faced me, so I said, I know I dread it, but with Dad I've got to try. And I crawled out in his darkest dungeon, in his foggy, drizzling the rain ye up on that man. And so I crawled and felt and found that chestnut tree that had them matches in, and found. And I got one out, and it got damp, and I struck it. Everything was wet. I struck it on my overhaul butt, and the head flew off of it. I struck a second, and it flew off. Oh my God. And maybe we got it. And I happened to think what had been trained. So I felt on my hair, and my hair ain't wet to the scalp. I hit it, dried it out a little, and I got the third match. Took a hit of it, held it right down into the scalp and rubbed it right slow to dry A in the hair like that. And I struck it and she went off. And I got me out a little that chestnut sap bark like it strings there it dies in under that thick bark, and it'll kindle quick, fast. And I got me out a handful of that and struck her to it, and it was just gone dry in there where it was on the tree. Then I throwed more on it and a little heavier bark on a piece, split up, and a piece of bark was laying there, and I throwed it and hid. And the other thicker bark with it to make a coal and keep a burning. And I carried that air for a light, and there was the campfire rained out, and I put that in it. Started putting the other wood that was laying there and kindled it up. We had some kindling and wet and got it a-going. And when I got the light out there, I had got the woman's gone. Nobody there, and she'd washed our plates. We'd took plates with us. And had washed his pocket knife and the spoon and fork we'd took with us to eat with. And the cup that we took to drink coffee in. She'd washed all that in her 3 plates and fixed it right there on the slab table, set it on it, that the lightning we carried there, cleaned up, and his knife was laying there with. He said she'd take his knife, probably. Now I don't believe she would. And so it must have been, dark as it was, the way she'd stayed up in that mountain. There's an old barn at I remember went by falling down under the other side on the North Carolina side. She's knowed that barn and been staying in. That's been he. And so, what they all has said now, and I'm going to put it on now to end it up with it. What they all has said that it took to make a witch was to kill 12 black calves. Kill 12 black calves. And go in a muddy pen and suck a sow hog 9 days. Suck a sow hog, get a tit and suck a sow hog 9 days in a muddy, marry pen with a nasty up and that stank in it. And then look at the sun. Just long as you could, just what you could stand to look at the sun, and I'll say a man will be something. It'll make him something different than what he eats. Even sucking that hog will do it. And then besides killing them 12 black calves. Here's one that they used to play. Now this goes back. I heard them play it when I was a boy. And then I don't know how far much back, more before that, it was played on the harp. And it's what they call the hen cackle. But there never was no words for it singing it, they just played it. I got out then and got to go. And I got down yonder one Saturday. And I run in this fella, and there wasn't many people had a talking machine. Record player, we called it a talking machine. And so I met him, and he drunk good whiskey. He had a quart. And he said, now I can't go face him to play that talking machine. Seemed like by myself was good, and said, I've got a quart of liquor here and you help drink it, and let's go to his house and asked him and play that talking machine, some of them good records on there. It was the Carter family. And that goes with drinking, good music, a hit. Or did me then. I've been sick anymore, and then God get to hear music, good music, and then be about half shot. That really sounded. And so we sat there and I drunk on it. And he'd say, you feeling it yet? I'd say, no. Well, what's wrong with that liquor? And he'd say, here, take you another shot of it. He said, drink it pretty heavy. And directly it got down to about close to half a pint, maybe a little less, and I just turned it up and emptied. And he said, by God, that ought to do it. So we can go help, you can go with him and play his talking machine. Sat there a while, and he said, you ready? And I ain't feeling nothing to help. He said, by God, it's all I've got. Well, I ain't going. I'd always go back home or somewhere. I ain't going with you unless you got some more liquor. I got up right down yonder, heard the church bell ringing around yonder. And no, I got up there and my knees locked on. And And I got out in the woods where nobody passing us. It wouldn't see me that way. And I knowed everything, but every time I'd start to pull the bushes, get up, my knees would throw me, and I couldn't stand up. Directly I heard a church bell ring, and I knowed Mom and all my aunts and others was to church. And I was wanting to go on if I could. And I laid there about an hour, and I pulled, and my knees come back till I could staggered around a little, and it got all right, and I come on home, and her and all the other young ones was around the end of the church, and nobody here. And I hadn't had nothing to eat. She had some pickled beans out there in the spring milk box, cooling that good cold water. And I never did like pickled beans, and learning eating them. That was the best pickled beans I'd ever eaten in my life, and yet I ain't eaten none yet that good. And she had a half a gallon. I eat half of them, or pickled beans she had in the milk spring box out there. And so I got back in the house, here by myself, and I think to myself, my grandmother on my mama's side teach me awful with the ONE.The about planting your stuff and all that, and signs of when to castrate the pigs and the male calves, and kept really up with it, she did. Planting the taters, everything, the beans. And I believed in it awfully and teached, and I come in the house, and Mama had one here on my neck, and I looked at it, and the sign was in the knees when I drunk it. And that's the reason she'd throw was in the knees, the way they had it. He'd thrown me, and I knowed just as good as I am now. I wasn't drunk. Just throwed me in the knees, and I couldn't walk. And when I looked at the almanac, sign was in the knees when I drunk. And so word got out thing over the country. He'd told it, said, by God, said, you better not give that Slim Ray Hicks no liquor. He said, by God, I had a quart, and he drunk it nearly all up and walked off and left. And he said his stomach was so fur, had to beat it, lost its strength before it hit it. Now, God changes people as the time that they've lived, giving them knowledge. If you ask for it, now it says in the good book, if you wanted knowledge, ask for it. In the real, now why people don't learn how to do nothing, they always give up before they get down to the play. Before they get down to the play. Now, if you get any knowledge from God, you got to come down where you ain't got nothing. You see no way out. And I was in there. Here with Mama. No way out. Not a brownie, not a dollar, no food in the house. And I was in that back room in there. And every little bit of money I would give out, the mechanic out here at Banner's Elk, he finally got till I asked him to tune my motor up. And he raised the hood and listened at it, and he said, I don't believe, he says it's wore out or something. I can't do nothing with it. Well, how much? Oh, he said, I charged 50 cents just to raise the hood. God. And you had to work hard if you could get it 5 hours to get 50 cents, 10 hours for $1, and go at it a slavery work on, grub it. And so, and what caused him of doing that, he'd went in debt then for a big rock house, and was doing that to try to pay for it and keep his eats. He raised 3 or 4 kids. So he'd done me that way. And gosh, I was wondering what I was going to even, I could see death. My body wore down. And I was sleeping in there in that room. And I was laying on my back. And with a feeling come on me, God, just give me a little of knowledge about a motor that you give other people. I says, I don't want to be jealous and want to know more than them. And I looked up, and the card quitter he'd worked on, overhauled it from a younger son that got dressed. And I looked up on the ceiling there, a motor was a running. Peskins in the valve. The whole diagram of it. A film of it. A running. Timing of the distributor and all. Showed it to me in the vision. I got up and the car was sitting out there at the top of the hill, wood pushing it, wouldn't fire leak. I went out there. Mama said, you'll just tear it up before nobody can hear. I'd know. Not now. But I know it. I went out there and took the distributor cap off. And he'd done put 3 sets of points on my eye. And it burnt up. And so he put on it, quit on me up there when I started home with it. He went back and he pulled it down, he put another set on it and the next set, and he got up there and there's a man a-walking a node, and I picked him up and he tickled, thought he was going to get a ride home. Got up there, quit, it's quit again. He said, God, I'm going to have to walk on top of it. He said, I was tickled to death going to ride home. And I said, I don't guess you're riding this trail. This makes the 3rd time I've been up here. And I walked back down, he pulled it, put another set in it, and got out yonder. Stick. And it nearly quit and caught and fluttered and got on home. Pushed it down yonder. So, after I showed that, I took the cap off, and in there was a little ball of welding steel. Where he'd been a welding. And looked like he'd have found the ice rolling again the ground and the point out again the plate. Burning them up. I wrapped that up in my pocketbook in a little paper. Went back out there and I'd hear, what you need to do now is get me a good chair in here and put a white suit on me, and I'll tell you what to do. God's fixed me with a little now. And I'd hear where you charged, and us with no money for them points and the welding steel. Out if you were a mechanic, you should have known that when you looked at the phone. So, welding steel. Sure life in trouble, few words we part. Short life in trouble, dear girl, poor boy with a broken heart. Now you know what you promised, not more than a week ago. You promised that you'd marry me, standing in your mama's door. Says now you broke your promise, go marry whoever you may. This old world's so big and so wide, I'll ramble back someday. Sure life in trouble, few words we part. Short life in trouble, dear girl, for boy with a broken heart. Along about midnight, when I get so doggone blue, I'd give this world and half of my life if I was only married to you. Sure life in trouble, few words we part. Short life in trouble, dear girl, poor boy with a broken heart. Now I was a-going, walking plumb down there where we went a Sunday at the party at Hattie's, a dating No, let's see, I was walking down in here then and got started later. She quit me and was walking down in there dating one that first. And then she quit me. And so I began to believe that it wasn't for me to get me no one. Some of them said my neck was too long and all that stuff. And it's too tall and gangly. And if you marry 'em for the looks, you've made a bad ass. You better get one that'll hand you and work good and agree together and leave. Don't marry 'em for the beauty, ONE.The. That's when you wound it and all this paint on. They can fool you up. You can marry 'em and be the teeth will lean at one place, and the legs took off and lean over another place. This man married one 'cause she could sing good. And they got him a room in the hotel, and she pulled her teeth out and laid him at one place. Legs off and laid them in another place, and the arms laid off, and her hair was laid off, a wig, and got up next morning, all that thing. He said, looked around, he said, God sang, hell sake sang. And so, you don't marry 'em for the looks. That's what runs. We marry 'em for what they'll do to try to survive and leave. And then the other wedding, the fed. And so we was walking along there, and I was blue. And there's a black-headed girl over in that country, and I didn't know her. I'd seen her a few times. She was a pressnate, black-headed. If you called it, she was beautiful, and was plain, not painted up with lipstick, eyebrows pulled out and stuff. She was normal over in that hill. They had no money and teach to buy lipstick and try to make a different looking person. And so I went up and asked her to walk with her, and she said, okay. And we was a-walking out and take anybody now in the road where we was a-walking at. Pretty close. They'd changed it. And so she says, is I one of his 4 or 5, 3 or 4 boys or something, and 3 or 4 girls. And she said, is I one of you boys got a nickel in your pocket? Now, a nickel. Now, about everybody anymore, I bet's got a nickel ain't in their pocket. If they ain't, they've got it. If they ain't got it, if they just got a nickel, they just, well, I have there ain't anymore. Now, I'll say it right. If you got $1, you just will not have there. If that was the way it was back in that in your life. $1 in his pocket, a 20 wouldn't help much. No more. It's little, money's little anymore to count. So money now then was different. Which in some things now the money buys better now than it did then. That's just the way it runs. Of the factors and the markets and stuff. I'd worked at sawmill some. Usually tried to keep a little money in my pocket, a little. I didn't want to get it out a nickel or penny if I could. Just to feel it, know it's in my pocket. Maybe forget it's in there. The other boys felt and said, no, we ain't seen a nickel in 12 months. Said, we just living off of our parents' work. I felt, and that honey, and I'd forgot it, and I've got 1 buffalo nickel in my pocket. Said, how? I said, yeah. She said, boys, I've walked with the right boy, I guess. Said, I've walked with one that's got enough to get up about and have a nickel in his pocket. Said they were said they were fortune teller way up yonder, about 2 miles from here, up in the beach. If you willing to spend it, she'll tell all our fortunes for a nickel to get her little snuff. Now that's true. And her name was Callie, and had that old long dress on, bonnet, button-up shoes, and a apron. She is a witch of her kind. She is a witch of her kind, fortune teller witch. And so we got up there, and they went in and told her, tuck the nickel, and she was tickled to get to tell all earn for a nickel. That's how money was. There wasn't much of circle. Nothing to do to make it circle. No job. And so we got in there. She began to tell. And the way she told, she had them old black coffee grounds, and put them in a cup, and then each one turned it. As you come to them, each one told the fortune to turn that cup yourself. Each one is going to get it told, turned it round and around, upside down. And them coffee grounds running around in that cup. The streaks look like to me. But she held them there and talked to you, and she could see babies you're going to have and everything in that cup. See, there it is, and there's the house. Well, it come out with a lot of them exactly like she told. Some of the others, and mine come out exactly, right to the dot. She looked in that cup when I turned it and said, "Great, bad news, son, young man." She said, "You've been a-dating one girl, and she wouldn't marry you, and you treated her good." Said, "I see it in the cup here," said, "a blonde-headed girl." And then said, "You dated another, and she throwed you off." And said, "Now you've here with us in a walking day, said, you need to hunt that girl now." Said, "You can't get married." Said, "You can't get married." She said, "Here's the house." When I hid it, when it come time, it was there, the house that she was a-seeing. Had groundhog hides hung on the end of it, and he'd hanging around on the peeling sideways. Their eating table was setting sideways, had the clinch on the floor. Till I hope remotely they'd married her. And she said, "They've a girl there that's much younger than you." She is. I'm 9 years old or something, older than Rosa. And said, "You've got to wait till she gets old enough." And then said, "It'll be putting you to be out to find her." And so I said, "God, I've got it." And then I felt good, seemed like about it too, and it went on. And I just quit. I quit even going to try to be with no girls at a revival meeting or nothing, walking. I just got settled down here farming, helping Mama with the key. Forgot all about going anywhere on Saturday and Sunday. And when it come that time, like she'd say, something come on me, said, "Ray, put your clothes on and shave up. Go out to the missionary church at Cool Spring." I shaved up that Saturday and went out there. Was sitting in kind of the back seats. I wasn't plumb to the back seat, was sitting. I see the girl get up, go over. They called on her. A small girl with her dress on, her hair. Went over and hollered and told her, said, "Come over and help us sing." And that was Rose, and I had never seen her before. And something said, "There's your woman." And that God is I thinking they. And that's just me a thinking they. And then the other'd say no. And directly it hit me and I got in there trying to find out where she stayed. And went, got started and was married then that March. That coming March in the spring of the year. I was coming out there, right out there where they blasted the rock, when they fixed this road back down to Mr. Ed's, nearly 7/10 for the school bus. And this little old wagon road yet then. I was walking there, and the very old devil jumped off of the bank and got between my shoulders and spoke with a voice. Said, Ray, you just well kill yourself now 'cause you go have to do it sometime anyhow later on. I think of that yet, but that's all. Said, you go have to do it sometime. You just well do it now. Get it over with. And so I got down in the road with that on my shoulders. I could feel him back. And I got down in the road on my knees and I prayed out, oh God, I don't want to die now. Let me live. And he took that off. And I ain't been bothered like that since. God relieved me by praying in the road. God, what if I don't want this. If you'll help me. And God, I don't want to die now. I was young. Said, well, just well hang yourself now, or you'll have to do it some other time. Said, just like your dad did and others. Said, get out of this. Said, get out of this punishment. It ain't no use stay here and punish like this. The way it is now, Doug, or all of a talking to, the way it is that sweet tall voice of the Lord will speak slow and gentle. Say, don't do that. That's wrong. And that evil spirit will stop fighting. Yeah, get it done. That's all right. Do it quick and get it done. It's all right. He speaks fast in the other, yeah. God, get that job done. It's all right. Get you in trouble. That's what's wrong with a lot of people this day and time, worse than it's ever been. They went on the devil's side. Now the devil speaks and you're right, yeah. I believe it was mine and the Lord in my left. And it ain't as low. It ain't as high voice. The Lord ain't. It's a slow, gentle, humble voice. Don't do that. Do as you wish to be done by. Do unto others as it happened to do unto you. And the devil, he speaks and said, God, that's no use. Said, get lay it to them all you can. Said, give them hell. You God, I've been in all that. It's a wonderful thing to think. It's what I live with yet, which anybody, like it says, can lead all. But if you've got that, he'll bring you back. It's just like it said in the book, broad is the way that leads to destructions. That's that devil that talks. Broad is the way it leads to destructions. Many go in there at. Narrow is the way that leads to life. That's this, of the sweet voice. Few there be that find. A lot of number of people never finds life. God, what a lie. Greed, yeah. Jealous of nobody. That's what they've noticed at Jonesboro with me. I ain't jealous of nobody a beating me or telling stories or nothing. And so with a lot now in any kind of business, they get jealous of another outdoing them. He can play better than me, or whatever it is you're doing, or the so-and-so of each job. God, I don't like it. All that. And so, my life in the last years, that got with me. If anybody can beat me, that's okay. And when you get like that, many people can't beat you. You'll stay on top.